What's up guys, I'm James, also known as Just Some Nerd, and today I'm out in the shop. I've got the Spirit Halloween Ecto goggles with me. These are pretty sweet the way that they are, but we're going to see what we can do to repaint them and mod them a little bit and see if we can make them pop even more. I have two ideas that I'm kind of kicking around. One, if I'm able to take these apart a little bit, I've got a few extra things that I want to do. If I'm not able to take them apart, I'm just going to mask it off and do a little bit simpler repaint with it. So the first thing I'm going to do is see how much these can come apart. I'm hoping I can get this little rivet off because I want to replace that. But okay, so let's get to it and let's see how it goes. So the first thing we're going to do is just start taking this apart. The rubber part came off easy enough, but this back black plastic part is a bear to get off. It is really glued on there good. I'm just using a screwdriver and trying to pry it off. Little by little it's starting to come off. I did try using a box cutter on this a little bit, and that was probably not a good idea because it seems like a really good way to cut yourself, so I don't recommend that, and it really didn't help very much. I just kept working at it with the screwdriver, and little by little it just kept coming off a little bit more. Aha! Did it! That was not easy, but I got that thing off. Man, I didn't think I was going to be able to get that off. I was really close to giving up when it finally popped off. Okay, so I got that off, and that was a bit of a bear to do. I don't know if I recommend you guys trying that or not. But the reason I was so adamant that I wanted to get this part off so that I could get inside here, I hate how unfinished this looks on the top. I want to get this rivet off so I can redo the way that this attaches at the top. If you look a little bit on YouTube, you can find some videos totally devoted to removing rivets, but basically what I'm doing is just taking the power drill, drilling straight through the middle of it, and it should pop right off once I drill through it. Got it. Now that it's all disassembled and we have that rivet off, we can start masking it off for paint. This is also a good time to go ahead and sand off the logos on the bottom. I'm going to be careful to mask off the whole back part so I don't get any paint on the wires. I know some people have been removing these lenses and replacing them with 3D printed ones, but I like the way that these ones rotate, so I'm not going to take them off on mine. So that's all that I'm going to mask off for the first round of paint. Hey, what's up guys? I'm interrupting my masking again to talk to you guys about the Ghostbusters West Virginia division and our fundraising efforts. Right now we have a store envy site as well as a TeePublic store where we're selling merchandise like pins and keychains and t-shirts and handbags with lots of fun designs on them. And all of that money goes to our charity fundraising, like our big Christmas toy drive that we do every year. We go out and get Christmas gifts for kids that are in foster care and other less fortunate situations. And we want to be able to do that again this year, but in order to make that happen, we need help from people like you to raise money. So I would really appreciate it if you would check out the links below to our site. Alright, now back to the build. Once we've finished off the masking, it's time to move on to paint. First we're going to hit it with a coat of primer, and that's going to help our paint bond to the plastic. And then we're ready for our regular paint. Alright, while our paint's drying, let's start working on the strap. I mentioned how I hated how unfinished it looked on the end. The left and the right sides have a nice little faux leather cover to them, but the top was just cut off and is just nothing. So I'm going to create a little tip cover like the left and the right sides have. I found this old leather wallet that I think will be great to cover the strap with. So I used the left and the right sides and I just traced out the shape that they have. And then I used that as my pattern to cut out the same shape from the wallet. I glued these in place with some super glue, and that was more than enough to hold it together, but to make it look a little bit nicer and match the sides a little bit more, I went ahead and sewed around the edge. Once that was all taken care of, it was time to add the snap. You poke a hole through the material and then thread your snap through and hammer it in. Once the paint's dry, I remove a little bit of that masking. I was still debating on whether or not I wanted to repaint the lenses or leave them the way that they are. I decided that I'm going to go ahead and leave the paint on the lenses basically the way it is. And now I'm going to start masking off all the little rivets and knobs and stuff. Masking all of this off ended up being a lot more work than I kind of imagined it being. Whether or not it's worth all this time spent masking versus just painting this on, it's something you kind of have to decide for yourself. I'll let you know here in a minute whether or not I think it was worth it from my point of view. Masking all this off was crazy tedious. I almost think that looking at this with all this masking tape on it is probably going to be more impressive than my final paint job. So now we're going over all the parts that I have masked off with satin black. And now it's time to finally remove all that masking that we spent so much time on and see if it was worth it. There are a few spots where the paint bled a little bit, so that's kind of disappointing, but I'll touch that up with a brush later, and we're going to do a lot of weathering on this, so that will allow us to hide some of our crimes. And now it's time to add the snap to the top of the goggles. This was pretty tricky to get to, but with a little bit of creativity I was able to set it in there. Testing the snap out, and we're good to go. Okay, our paint's dry. Our snap is set, so now we can go ahead and reattach the back. The rubber part will just slide right back into place. I'm using a little bit of super glue to help hold it, and then using the same super glue I'm going to reattach the back panel to the goggles. Oh, I almost forgot to mention this. I also 3D printed a little greebly to add to the front of the goggles. I'll have a link in the description to this model if you want to download it and print it yourself. Now it's time for the last step and my favorite part. We're going to do some weathering. The first thing I'm going to do is use some gloss black acrylic paint to touch up those spots that ran a little bit. After seeing how long it took to mask all of this off and knowing that the paint still kind of ran a little bit, I'm going to have to go back and touch it up. I think it probably would have been easier to just hand paint the little rivets, maybe mask off the bigger switches, but I think if I were to do this again, I would just hand paint the little rivets. I want this to look kind of rusty in a couple spots so it looks old and used. To accomplish that, I'm using some burnt sienna and some burnt umber acrylic paint. I get a little bit of it on my brush, dab it off on a paper towel, and then just lightly brush it on. I also use a paper towel to dab off some of the excess if I think I get too much on. Now you guys know how much I love Rub and Buff, so you know I've got to get some silver Rub and Buff in here. To apply this, I'm just lightly brushing it on with an old brush, just kind of hitting the edges. When you're doing stuff like this, you want to think about how things are going to wear and tear naturally. One of the things that I didn't like about the way that this was painted originally was it had that silver paint on it, but it was just everywhere and it just had no rhyme or reason to it. And that was a big part of why I wanted to repaint these. Now is a good time to go ahead and put our decals on. I printed out some reference photos to see where these were supposed to go, and this was when I realized that the ones that are included are not really that accurate, but rather than look up more online and print my own, I decided I would just go ahead and use these. I want these to look weathered too, so I'm going to brush over them with a little bit of watered down black paint and then just dab it off with a paper towel. This will make them look oily and greasy and gross. And now I'm going to go ahead and start putting the strap back on, but there's one more step. We have that snap that we put on here to connect the strap to the goggles, and it's really bright and shiny and everything else is worn looking and rusty and beat up. So I don't want that snap to look so shiny, so I'm going to take a little bit of that burnt umber paint and just kind of dab it on that snap to make it look more worn also. I'm going to go back and add a clear coat later, but for now I think we're done, so let's take a step back and check out our work. there you go, guys. There's how I repainted my Ecto goggles. Now I guess it's time to try them on, see how they look. Gotta take my glasses off, put them on here, mess my hair up real good, turn the light on. Yeah, things look cool, man. I think they look more like industrial and kind of like military grade now. You know, they look like they've really kind of been through something, been beat up. I like that a lot. I think that's really cool. Have any of you guys done repaints on your goggles in a different way? If so, I'd love to see pictures. You can send them to me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I have links to how you can find me on those places down below. If you have questions about anything that I did in this video, you can leave a comment down below and I'll do my best to get back to you. I'm normally pretty quick about that. If you enjoyed this video, I recommend that you check out my repainting of the Spirit Halloween Ghost Trap too. I've also got unboxing videos for the goggles and the trap, as well as the PKE meter, and that leads me to, on the list of Spirit Halloween things to do a little bit of modding on, the PKE meter is the only one that's left, and I'm not really sure what I want to do with this yet. So I'm hoping that some of you guys maybe have some recommendations or some suggestions for things that I could do to this. Like, I have some ideas of what would be really cool, but I'm not really sure maybe how to go about doing it. So I would love to get some input from you guys. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. Please consider subscribing. And if you do subscribe, hit that little bell icon so you get notified when I have new videos coming up. Like I mentioned, I've got something with the PKE meter in the works, so that'll be coming up soon. And lots of other fun cosplay themed things, both Ghostbusters and non-Ghostbusters related. So until next time, take it easy, guys.